I also want to bring in conservative commentator Zoe Knowles. Zoe, so we are learning that according to the Conservative Party, the Conservative Fund was used to cover the difference of the cost of schooling in Ottawa versus Regina, private schooling for Mr. Scheer's kids. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that as we're getting more information, Conservative voters have a right to know where that money was going. But as the party said, there was no misuse. I think that we're seeing the first trickles of this story, and it'll be important to keep close to it.
All right. Your take, meantime, on the resignation of Andrew Scheer?
Well, to be honest, I don't think he had much of a choice at this point. I think that a lot of different groups within the Conservative Party recognized that there were problems with how the last campaign was run, how the election was run. And I especially think that we're going to see a real push towards moderate voters, issues that really appeal to moderate voters, especially on social issues, whether that be climate change or a woman's right to choose or same-sex marriage. And that's where I really think we're going to see a robust debate as we head into the leadership race.
Did support for Mr. Scheer, was it dividing the party? Was it split down the middle? Where did it fall up until this very day?
Well, I think just about everybody in the party can agree that the election obviously did not go the way that a lot of people were expecting it to go. And I think that the real divide is between not whether or not, there were problems in the election. I think everybody can agree on that. I think the divide is how do we best resolve those concerns? Is where is there room for growth? And I think that Mr. Scheer's resignation today shows that enough Conservatives agree that there is room for growth by looking at more moderate voters.
You are young, you are a Conservative, you are a female. Who do you want to see? What kind of a leader do you want to see of the party moving forward?
Well, you know what? I won't speculate on any names. Nobody has thrown their hat into the ring just yet. But what I'll be excited to see is a moderate, more progressive, conservative leader. And what I think is especially interesting is that, as we've seen with Jagmeet Singh and as we saw with Doug Ford, no longer are you required to have long-lasting bona fides as a sitting member of the House, be that at the provincial level or the federal level. So I think that with this election coming up, or with this race coming up, rather, it'll be interesting to see who else outside of the House is interested in throwing their hat in the ring.
Would you argue that this upcoming leadership race is even more pivotal than the last one that Andrew Scheer won because of the nature of the House representation? It's a minority Liberal government. Back in the last leadership race, the Trudeau government did not seem vulnerable at all. Now there seems to be an opening.
Well, I think that we're no closer to a federal election today than we were yesterday. A number of parties, including the NDP and the Bloc, frankly don't have the funds to head into a federal election that much sooner. And additionally, the Liberal Party, with the USMCA ratification coming up hopefully quite soon, they will be able to really take advantage of that positive press coverage. However, I would say that this leadership race is going to be more important than ever because it isn't just about who is going to be taking the Conservative Party into the next election. It's about what does the future of the Conservative Party look like, given the backdrop of climate change and an increasingly moderate country.
What does the future of the Conservative Party look like? I think that is indeed the key question.
I completely agree. And I think that when Mr. Scheer, for example, refused to walk in the Pride Parade, I think that those are the kinds of issues that a lot of Canadians see as settled. These social issues are not something that Conservatives or Canadians, for that matter, want to relitigate. And that's where I think the party needs to move towards.
Right, but he has the right to choose not to. So, again, is it an optics thing? If he had just agreed to walk in a Pride Parade, would he still be leader today?
You know what? I don't think it is. And the reason is because it is no longer sufficient to just say that you tolerate an issue or that you will do your best to support an issue. What voters were looking for was, or at least what Conservative voters like me were looking for, was a leader to say that they wholeheartedly will champion the rights of LGBTQ+ Canadians, just as they would for any other Canadian. And that does not just mean marching in a Pride Parade. That means having your actions speak for that statement. You can't just talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. And that doesn't just mean in a Pride Parade, that means in your record in the House.
And so, Zoe, I see a divide between perhaps older, more traditional conservatives and a growing youth movement. Would you agree with that?
Well, not necessarily, actually. I think that there are a number of conservatives who've been in the party for a few decades who recognize that the party needs to move forward. I was hearing from a friend of mine that whereas 15 years ago, when issues like same-sex marriage and LGBTQ plus rights were being debated,
Right.
her dad would never have attended a same-sex marriage, but today he will, and he calls himself a conservative. I think that there are a lot of, especially when it comes to these social issues, I think that we're seeing a lot of commonalities between the old guard and some of the new conservative voters like myself. However, where I do think there is a divide is between the older conservative voters who remember the split between the progressive conservatives and the reform in the 90s, and those like me who this is not a very clear memory. So that's why I think some of the older conservatives may be a little bit more reticent to have those foundational debates about policy and issues and where the Conservative Party needs to move. And that's where I think we're going to see some of the newer Conservative Party members or younger Conservative Party members really trying to push the party towards those more robust debates in the leadership race.
Zoe Knowles, conservative commentator. Always good to have you on. Appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.